Klaus Richter pressed his eye against a vision slit of his Panzer IV, scanning the white horizon where snow met gray sky. The metallic taste of fear filled his mouth. 3 tanks from his company had been destroyed in 2 days, each hit from distances that should have been impossible. The frozen corpses of their crews now lay buried under fresh snow, another statistic in this endless war. His gunner Franz Becker sat rigid beside him, hands trembling slightly on the controls. They both knew what awaited them in this desolate landscape, where death came silently from the east. The radio crackled. Enemy contact. 800 meters. Klaus felt his stomach tighten. That distance should have been safe from Soviet anti-tank rifles. Should have been. He ordered his driver Werner Schmidt to advance cautiously while his loader Otto Kraus prepared another shell. The temperature inside the tank was barely warmer than outside, their breath forming clouds in the cramped interior. Through the slit, Klaus spotted movement near a destroyed farmhouse, its blackened walls standing like broken teeth against the snow. Then it happened. A sharp metallic ping echoed through the hull. Not a penetration, but close, too close. Franz swung the turret toward the source. Another ping. Klaus shouted orders, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Werner reversed the tank behind a low ridge. They had survived, but barely. The question burned in Klaus's mind like acid. How were the Soviets hitting them at these ranges? 2 hours later, after securing the area with infantry support, Klaus led a patrol to examine the Soviet position. What they found changed everything. Among the frozen bodies of Soviet soldiers lay a PTRS-41 anti-tank rifle, its long barrel still radiating a faint warmth. Beside it, scattered in the snow like brass flowers, were dozens of spent cartridges. Klaus picked one up, feeling its weight, studying its unusual design. This was no ordinary ammunition. He ordered his men to collect every cartridge they could find, both spent and live. Back at the temporary camp, Klaus gathered his crew around a field table inside a requisition barn. The wind howled outside, driving snow through cracks in the wooden walls. He carefully opened one of the captured rounds, his experienced hands working with precision. What he saw made his breath catch. The projectile core was different from anything in German arsenals. Harder, denser. Franz leaned closer, his young face illuminated by the kerosene lamp. "This is tungsten carbide," Klaus said quietly. The others stared in disbelief. Otto, the oldest of the crew at 38, picked up another round, examining it with the careful attention of a craftsman. He had worked in a munitions factory before the war. His weathered face showed recognition. They found a way to make it stable at high velocities. He muttered. Klaus nodded slowly. The implications were staggering. The Soviets had solved a metallurgical problem that German engineers considered unsolvable for mass production. This ammunition could maintain its integrity and penetrating power at distances far exceeding normal expectations. Werner paced nervously, his boots scraping against the frozen dirt floor. "So we have been wrong," he said. "We thought our armor was superior. We thought their weapons were primitive." Klaus met his driver's eyes. "We were arrogant," he replied. The room fell silent except for the wind. Each man understood the terrible truth. They had underestimated their enemy, and good men had died because of it. Franz broke the silence. "What do we do now?" Klaus looked at the ammunition spread before them. "We learn," he said. "We adapt, or we die." Morning brought no relief from the cold. Klaus assembled his crew before dawn, their faces illuminated by the weak light of a single lantern. The captured ammunition lay arranged on the table like evidence in a trial. He had spent the night analyzing every detail, measuring, weighing, comparing it to their own armor-piercing rounds. The differences were subtle but significant. Soviet engineers had achieved something remarkable with limited resources, and that realization gnawed at him. Franz arrived last, carrying hot coffee in dented metal cups. The steam rose like ghosts in the frigid air. Klaus began his briefing. The tungsten carbide core was only part of the solution. The cartridge design allowed for higher muzzle velocity without destroying the barrel. The Soviets had also improved their powder mixture, creating more consistent pressure curves. Otto listened intently, occasionally nodding. He understood manufacturing better than any of them. These rounds are expensive to produce. Otto observed. They cannot have unlimited quantities. Klaus agreed. That meant Soviet gunners were selective, patient, waiting for targets worth the precious ammunition. It explained why some tanks were hit, while others passed untouched. Werner raised a question that had troubled them all. How do their gunners achieve such accuracy at extreme range? The PTRS-41 was a powerful weapon, but hitting a moving target at 800 meters required exceptional skill. Klaus had considered this throughout the sleepless night. He theorized that Soviet training had evolved. Their gunners were learning to lead targets precisely, compensating for wind, accounting for the slight drop in trajectory. They were becoming experts through brutal necessity. Franz looked uncomfortable. "You almost sound like you admire them," he said quietly. Klaus met his gaze without flinching. "I respect competent enemies. Anything less gets you killed." The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Hoffman, their company commander. He entered the barn with two other officers, their uniforms crisp despite the harsh conditions. Klaus stood and saluted. Hoffman examined the ammunition with interest, picking up several rounds. His expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "This information must reach higher command immediately," Hoffman said. Klaus had expected this. He had already prepared a detailed report, complete with measurements and observations. Hoffman took the papers, scanning them quickly. "Good work, Richter. Your analysis may save lives." But there was something in the lieutenant's tone that suggested doubt, a hesitation that Klaus recognized. The higher ranks might not want to hear that Soviet technology had surpassed their own in any category. After Hoffman departed, Klaus gathered his crew again. They had orders to conduct a reconnaissance patrol along the eastern sector. Intelligence reported Soviet movements near a village called Krasny Pozad, 12 kilometers distant. It would be dangerous. The Soviets now owned the initiative in this sector, emboldened by their recent successes. Klaus checked his sidearm, a Walther P-38 that had never left his side since Stalingrad. Franz cleaned the main gun with obsessive care, while Otto organized their ammunition. Werner performed his pre-mission checks on the engine, listening for any irregularity in its rhythm. They rode out at noon, their Panzer grinding through deep snow. The landscape was endlessly white, broken only by skeletal trees and the occasional ruined building. Klaus maintained radio silence, knowing Soviet listening posts were everywhere. The cold seeped through every gap in the tank's armor, making their joints ache. 2 hours into patrol, Werner spotted tracks in the snow. Fresh, recent, Klaus ordered a halt. Through his periscope, he studied the terrain ahead. A gentle rise offered concealment, but beyond it lay open ground for nearly a kilometer. Perfect killing field for a PTRS gunner. Franz whispered into the intercom. "Do we proceed?" Klaus weighed the options. Their mission required reconnaissance, but throwing away their lives served no purpose. He decided to dismount and scout ahead on foot with Otto. They moved carefully, weapons ready, scanning for any sign of enemy presence. The snow crunched softly under their boots. Near the rise, Klaus found what he was looking for. A shallow depression in the snow, still fresh. A Soviet position, recently abandoned. He knelt, examining the compressed snow, the faint impressions of a bipod. They had been here, watching, waiting. Perhaps they had seen Klaus's tank approach and relocated. Perhaps they were watching right now. Klaus and Otto returned to the tank, moving with practiced silence across the frozen landscape. Every shadow could hide a Soviet gunner, every snowdrift a concealed position. When they reached the Panzer, Klaus briefed his crew quickly. The enemy was close, possibly observing them at this very moment. Franz suggested they withdraw, but Klaus shook his head. Running blindly was as dangerous as advancing recklessly. They needed information about Soviet positions, and that required careful observation. He ordered Werner to reposition the tank behind a cluster of destroyed buildings, using the rubble for partial concealment. From this new vantage point, Klaus studied the surrounding terrain through his binoculars. The village of Krasny Pozad lay ahead, its buildings reduced to shells by months of fighting. Smoke rose from several locations, suggesting recent activity. Otto took notes on everything they observed, documenting distances, Potential firing positions, likely approach routes. This methodical intelligence gathering was unglamorous but essential. Wars were won by men who understood their battlefield, not by heroes who charged blindly forward. Franz maintained watch on their flanks, while Werner kept the engine idling, ready for immediate movement. Hours passed. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow. Then Klaus saw movement. A figure emerged from the village ruins, followed by another. Soviet soldiers, moving with purpose toward a position northeast of their location. Klaus counted 6 men, all carrying equipment. One carried what appeared to be a PTRS-41, its distinctive length unmistakable even at distance. They were setting up a new firing position, probably anticipating German patrols along this route. Klaus made a decision that would haunt him later. Instead of engaging, he chose to watch and learn. The Soviet team worked efficiently, their movements practiced and coordinated. They established their position with remarkable speed, using natural terrain features for concealment. Klaus observed their technique through his binoculars, noting how they positioned the rifle, how the gunner tested sight lines, how the spotters organized ammunition. These were not desperate conscripts. These were professionals who had refined their craft through countless engagements. Otto whispered observations that Klaus recorded mentally. The loader worked with smooth precision. The spotter used a homemade range card. The gunner made minute adjustments to account for wind direction. As darkness approached, Klaus ordered withdrawal. They had gathered valuable intelligence without revealing their position. The return journey was tense, every kilometer feeling like 10. Werner navigated carefully, avoiding open areas where moonlight might silhouette their tank. They reached their lines after midnight, exhausted but alive. Klaus reported immediately to Lieutenant Hoffmann, describing everything they had witnessed. Hoffmann listened with growing interest, particularly when Klaus detailed the Soviet team's professionalism and coordination. This confirms other reports. Hoffmann said, "The Soviets are adapting faster than we anticipated." The following morning brought new orders. Klaus and his crew will participate in a briefing for all tank commanders in the sector. The conference was held in a partially intact schoolhouse, its walls still decorated with faded children's drawings. 20 commanders attended, veterans with hollow eyes and winter-worn faces. A major from Division Intelligence addressed them, confirming what Klaus had discovered. The Soviets had deployed specially trained anti-tank teams equipped with improved ammunition. These teams were responsible for the recent increase in German armor losses. The major's voice carried no emotion, just facts delivered with clinical precision. Klaus was asked to share his analysis of the captured ammunition. He stood before his peers, feeling their skeptical gazes. Some were older, more experienced, decorated veterans who had fought since Poland. He explained the tungsten carbide cores, the improved cartridge design, the enhanced muzzle velocity. He described the Soviet team's tactics, their patience, their coordination. Several commanders interrupted with questions, some dismissive, others genuinely curious. A captain named Steiner challenged his conclusions. "You give them too much credit," Steiner said sharply. "They are still Bolsheviks with inferior equipment." Klaus remained calm. "Underestimating them is why we keep losing tanks." He replied evenly. The tension in the room was palpable. The major intervened, supporting Klaus's assessment with additional intelligence reports. Photographs were passed around showing destroyed German tanks, all bearing the distinctive penetration patterns of PTRS hits at long range. The evidence was undeniable. Steiner said nothing more, but his expression showed resentment. After the briefing, several younger commanders approached Klaus privately, asking for additional details. They understood that survival depended on respecting the enemy's capabilities. Franz waited outside, stamping his feet against the cold. "How did it go?" he asked. Klaus looked at the bleak landscape stretching endlessly eastward. "Some listened," he said quietly. "Some never will." 3 weeks passed with brutal monotony. The front line shifted back and forth like waves on a frozen shore, each side gaining and losing the same devastated ground repeatedly. Klaus and his crew survived through caution and the knowledge they had gained. They avoided predictable routes, maintained vigilance at extreme distances, and respected the invisible threat that lurked beyond 800 meters. Other crews were not as fortunate. Captain Steiner died when his tank was hit during what he called a demonstration of proper aggressive tactics. The PTRS round penetrated his turret at 750 meters. Klaus attended a brief memorial service, watching as Steiner's crew stood silent in the snow, their faces empty of emotion. War had a way of proving theories with blood. The intelligence Klaus provided had circulated through the division. Then higher, engineers began studying countermeasures, additional armor configurations, tactical doctrines for engaging Soviet anti-tank teams. But implementation took time, and time was measured in lives. Franz had become quieter over the weeks, the initial eagerness of youth replaced by weary professionalism. Otto's hand shook slightly when he loaded shells, a tremor that worsened each day. Werner rarely smiled anymore. They were all changing, shaped by the relentless pressure of survival. Klaus saw in their eyes during the long nights when sleep refused to come, when the cold penetrated so deeply that no fire could warm them. One morning in early March, orders arrived for a major offensive. The division would push east to recapture territory lost during the winter. Klaus read the operational plan with growing dread. The attack route crossed open terrain where Soviet anti-tank teams would have ideal fields of fire. He raised his concerns with Lieutenant Hoffman, who acknowledged him but could offer no alternative. Orders from above. Hoffman said simply, "We advance at dawn tomorrow." Klaus returned his crew and told them to prepare. They worked through the night, checking every system, loading extra ammunition, making peace with whatever lay ahead. Franz wrote a letter home. Though mail service had become increasingly unreliable, Otto cleaned his rifle for the third time. Werner adjusted the engine one final time, listening to its rhythm like a doctor monitoring a patient's heartbeat. Dawn came gray and cold. 40 tanks formed up in attack formation, their engines creating a collective roar that echoed across the frozen landscape. Klaus positioned his Panzer in the second wave, a compromise between caution and duty. The advance began at precisely 600 hours. They moved forward at moderate speed, turrets traversing constantly, every crew member scanning for threats. The first kilometer passed without incident. Then the second. Klaus felt tension building in his chest like a physical weight. The radio remained silent except for terse position reports. Too quiet. The Soviets were waiting, choosing their moment with the patience Klaus had learned to fear. At 3 kilometers, the first tank exploded. A Panzer III on the left flank, hit squarely in the side armor. Then another, and another. The Soviet anti-tank teams had positioned themselves perfectly, creating overlapping fields of fire that turned the advance into a killing ground. Klaus ordered evasive maneuvers, smoke deployment, anything to break the deadly pattern. Franz fired at suspected positions, the main guns recoil rocking the tank. Otto loaded with mechanical efficiency, despite the chaos. Werner drove with inspired desperation, zigzagging through the carnage. Around them, tanks burned, black smoke rising into the pale sky. The radio filled with panicked voices, officers trying to maintain order, crews reporting casualties. The soundtrack of disaster. Klaus made a split-second decision that violated his orders but might save his crew. He commanded Werner to withdraw behind a ridge that offered defilade protection. 3 other tanks followed his example. Lieutenant Hoffman's voice crackled over the radio, demanding they return to the attack. Klaus ignored it. He had learned that surviving to fight another day was more valuable than dying for a doomed objective. From their protected position, they watched the attack collapse. 15 tanks destroyed in 20 minutes. The remainder retreated in disorder, leaving burning hulks scattered across the snow like metal tombstones. The silence that followed was worse than the battle itself. That evening, Klaus faced a court of inquiry for disobeying orders. He stood before 3 senior officers in a commandeered farmhouse, its windows covered with blankets for blackout. They questioned him about his actions, his reasoning, his loyalty. Klaus answered honestly, describing the tactical situation, the predictable nature of the attack plan, the capabilities of Soviet anti-tank teams that he had documented weeks earlier. One officer accused him of cowardice. Another suggested his analysis had been exaggerated to excuse his failure. But the third officer, a colonel with Iron Cross decorations from the previous war, studied Klaus with shrewd eyes. "How many men are in your crew?" he asked. "4, sir," Klaus replied. "And how many crews did your decision save?" "3 others followed my withdrawal, sir. 12 men total." The colonel nodded slowly. 12 men who can fight tomorrow. He dismissed the inquiry with a wave of his hand. Spring arrived gradually, bringing mud that was somehow worse than snow. The war continued its grinding progression, consuming men and machines with indifferent efficiency. Klaus received orders transferring him to a training command, where he would teach new tank commanders the lessons learned at such terrible cost. His crew would be broken up, reassigned to replacement units. They spent their final evening together in a quiet barn, sharing the last of Otto's hidden schnapps. No one spoke much. What was there to say? They had survived when so many had not, and that simple fact carried both relief and inexplicable guilt. Franz broke the silence. "Do you think it mattered? What we learned about their ammunition, their tactics?" Klaus considered the question carefully. Some commanders listened. He said, "Finally, some crews survived because of what we discovered. That has to be enough." Otto raised his cup in a silent toast. Werner joined him. Franz hesitated, then raised his cup as well. Klaus looked at these men who had become closer than brothers through shared danger and suffering. The PTRS-41 and its tungsten ammunition had been their teacher, proving that wars were won not by assumptions of superiority, but by respect for the enemy's ingenuity and willingness to adapt. It was a hard lesson, purchased with blood, but those who learn it live to remember. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the human cost of war and the importance of respecting adversity, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Share this story with others who appreciate historical narratives that honor the complexity of human experience. Leave a comment below telling us what aspect of this story resonated most with you. Was it Klaus's analytical approach? The crew's bond? The recognition that enemies can teach us valuable lessons? Your engagement helps us continue creating content that explores the depths of human resilience and adaptation. Thank you for watching, and remember that history's greatest lessons often come from understanding rather than hatred. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.